Why does Saucy Santana suddenly miss Diddy now? It's a simple question with a not-so-simple answer. Just months ago, nobody was saying a word. Not when Diddy's homes were being raided, not when the headlines screamed sex trafficking and racketeering. Silence. Now, with a partial courtroom victory under his belt, Diddy's name is creeping back into conversations, and not just from lawyers or journalists, but from the very people who once stayed
Dog, what's up? What's up? What's up? People love me. Everybody fuck with Santana. It'll never work. It'll never work. This is my life. It's only one Tanner. It'll never work. It'll never be another. It'll never be another. It'll never be another. Thank y'all so much. It'll never be another motherfucking me. Thank y'all so much. I want to thank everybody. Thank you, Jameson. Thank everybody. Thank all OCG. Thank people that just came in today to bless.
Saucy Santana, known for his loud personality and even louder loyalty to Young Miami, went live on Instagram and casually dropped the line, "Yeah, Diddy was fun." Just like that, the internet lit up. But this isn't just about missing parties or laughing over champagne. This is about what Diddy represents: fame, power, access, and what people are willing to risk to stay in his orbit. Because while Diddy might have walked away from the most explosive charges in his federal trial, he's not walking free. Not yet. He's still behind bars, facing time for other convictions and waiting for a sentencing date that could change everything. So why are people suddenly reaching out now? Is it loyalty or is it strategy? This story isn't about nostalgia, about survival. In the world of celebrity, silence isn't always about fear. Sometimes it's just good business. It was just a few seconds on Instagram. But it was enough to spark a wildfire. Saucy Santana, never one to hold his tongue, leaned into the camera and answered a question that had been floating around. Quietly, "Do you miss Diddy?" Without flinching, he smiled and said, "Yeah, Diddy was fun." No apology, no hesitation, just pure, unfiltered honesty. But in this case, honesty came with consequences. The clip spread fast on the internet, and the comments under the Neighborhood Talks repost didn't hold back. Some praised Santana for keeping it real. Others called him out, accusing him of speaking up only now because Diddy might be coming home soon. One user wrote, "Everybody missed Diddy now that he coming home, but was hush as a mouse when the heat was on." Another added bluntly, "This why Nicki don't like you now, just be doing anything." To understand the weight behind those few words, you have to rewind a bit. Santana isn't just some random voice. He's Young Miami's best friend, the same Young Miami who was publicly and very intimately tied to Diddy for over a year. Lavish vacations, birthday parties, PDA-filled red carpets, they were everywhere. Santana was part of that inner circle. So when he says Diddy was fun, he's speaking from the inside. From the yacht parties, the private jets, the whispered conversations behind velvet ropes. But that connection also raises a bigger question. Was this a moment of genuine emotion? Or a carefully timed reminder that he was once in the room with one of the most powerful men in music? People weren't buying the timing. For months, Santana, like so many in Diddy's orbit, had stayed silent while the media ripped the bad boy mogul apart. Now, with Diddy partially cleared and whispers of a possible early release swirling, the tone had suddenly shifted. To some, it felt calculated. "This man waited until the smoke cleared before popping out," one user wrote. "Now that Diddy might be getting out, everyone wants to pretend they were loyal." Another comment hit even harder. "Nicki don't like you for a reason. Just be doing anything for attention." The shade wasn't subtle, and the internet doesn't forget, but not everyone was dragging him. A smaller, louder corner of the internet came to Santana's defense. They argued that it's human to miss someone once the dust settles, especially if that person was once a major part of your lifestyle. "Let that man say Diddy was fun. Y'all act like he confessed to a crime," one fan posted. Another joked, "Y'all mad but still trying to get invited? His party's gonna be twice as lit now." It was a classic social media split: loyalty versus clout, memory versus motive. For every person calling Santana out, there was another brushing it off as harmless nostalgia. But what everyone could agree on: the timing was suspicious. And in the world of fame, when timing raises eyebrows, so does the intention behind it. While the world debated Saucy Santana's loyalty, Diddy was still sitting behind bars, caught in one of the most chaotic legal storms of his life. But here's the twist. He actually won part of the battle after a relentless 2-month federal trial that felt more like a high-stakes drama than a courtroom proceeding. Diddy walked away not guilty on the biggest and most damaging charges: sex trafficking and racketeering. Charges that, if proven, would have not only buried his legacy but likely erased him from the public stage forever. His legal team, made up of 8 seasoned defense attorneys, went head-to-head with nearly 36 witnesses, some of them former insiders who once worked for Diddy himself. The prosecution painted him as a manipulative, controlling figure. But in the end, it wasn't enough. The jury wasn't convinced. And for that moment, Diddy got a rare win, a federal win, the kind that almost never happens. But it wasn't a clean slate, despite dodging the biggest bullets. The jury did find him guilty on 2 counts, tied to transporting women for prostitution, less explosive in headlines, but still serious under the law. Each count carries the potential for years behind bars. And even though Diddy has nearly 10 months of time already served, he's still facing a sentencing hearing that could put him away for much longer. The maximum, 20 years. So while the headlines screamed not guilty, the reality is far more complicated. Diddy didn't walk out of that courtroom a free man. He walked out with a fractured victory, staring down a sentence that still threatens everything he's built. And for the people who think this story is over, it's not even close. When Diddy returned to his Brooklyn federal holding cell after the verdict, it wasn't with his head down or in silence. It was with a standing ovation. That's right, an actual round of applause from fellow inmates who watched the impossible happen. Someone beating the federal government at its own game, according to his lead attorney, Mark Agnifilo. The moment was bigger than just a personal win. It sent a shockwave through the prison walls. They all said, "We never get to see anyone who beats the government," Agnifilo revealed in an interview. For many of those men, Diddy's courtroom victory wasn't about celebrity, it was about hope. Hope that the system doesn't always win. Hope that power and persistence can flip the script, even behind bars. And for Diddy, that reaction might have meant more than any red carpet moment in his career. Inside those walls, respect isn't handed out for fame, it's earned. In battle, and whether people on the outside love him or loathe him, inside that prison, he became a symbol, not of perfection, not of innocence, but of resistance. Still, even as the applause faded, the reality remained. He wasn't going anywhere. Not yet. Despite beating the most serious charges, Diddy remained in custody, the weight of his remaining convictions hanging over his head. And while the public saw headlines about a courtroom win, the inmates saw something deeper: a man who, against all odds, pushed back and didn't break. But if that moment inside gave Diddy strength, the next step in his fight would test it all over again. Diddy didn't walk into that courtroom hoping for mercy. He came in ready for war, and his legal team. They played it like a high-stakes chess match from the very first move. 8 defense attorneys, all veterans of courtroom warfare, were assembled like a legal dream team. Their mission wasn't just to argue facts, it was to dismantle the narrative piece by piece. Witness after witness was cross-examined, including former employees who knew Diddy's world from the inside out. But the defense didn't flinch. They challenged everything hard. Behind the scenes, Diddy wasn't just sitting there quietly either. Reports say he was constantly writing notes, passing handwritten instructions to his lawyers. During some of the trial's most critical moments, he wasn't passive. He was strategic, present, and fully involved in his own defense. It wasn't just a trial, it was a performance. I meant to sway a jury, and it worked. One of the boldest moments came from attorney Tenny Geragos, who stood in front of the jury and said something most lawyers would never dare. "You may think to yourself, wow, he is a really bad boyfriend," she admitted. But then came the punch. That is simply not sex trafficking. It was a raw, risky approach. Acknowledge the flaws, but separate them from the law. And that strategy, it hit hard. Mark Agnifilo, Diddy's lead attorney, summed it up best. The blunt talk was a no-brainer. The jury didn't need theatrics, they needed truth. Or at least the version that made the most legal sense. And that's exactly what they got. It wasn't about painting Diddy as innocent. It was about creating just enough doubt to remind everyone that accusations don't always equal guilt. In a courtroom where the odds were stacked sky-high, Diddy's team managed to pull off something nearly no one does: beat the system. But even with the win in hand, the real battle still loomed. The courtroom battle may be over, but Diddy's fight is far from finished right now. He's still sitting in federal custody, counting down the days until his sentencing hearing, scheduled for October 3rd, and while his team is pushing to have it moved up to July, nothing is guaranteed. The clock is ticking, and what comes next could define the rest of his life. Diddy's already served nearly 10 months, and his lawyers are hoping that time will be factored into the final sentence. But here's the catch: despite the partial acquittal, He's still facing prison time for those 2 convictions tied to prostitution. Each count carries weight, and depending on how the judge views his past, his behavior, and the broader impact of this case, the sentence could stretch out for years. But there's another twist. Once released, if released, Diddy won't just walk back into the spotlight. His attorney confirmed that he plans to enter a treatment program for domestic batterers. A quiet admission that, even if the law didn't find him guilty of the worst charges, Diddy recognizes that there are personal demons he can't ignore anymore. He burns hot in all matters, his lawyer said. What he's come to see is that there's no amount of fame or fortune that can erase his flaws in that statement. It says more than any headline, it's not just about winning in court, it's about confronting what power tried to cover up for years. So what comes next? A sentence, a program, and possibly a long road to redemption if the public is even willing to grant him that. But one thing's for sure, the saga isn't over. If anything, it's just entering its most unpredictable chapter. So now the spotlight shifts from the courtroom to the culture. Can Diddy bounce back after all of this, or is his reign officially over? For decades, Diddy was untouchable, a mogul who transformed music, fashion, and fame itself. But after raids, mugshots, and explosive accusations, his brand has been burned and bruised in ways even money can't fix. Public trust fading, corporate ties quietly unraveling, and even with a courtroom win, the scars of this scandal run deep. Because while not guilty means freedom, it doesn't always mean forgiveness. And what about the people orbiting him? Friends like Saucy Santana, who are just now breaking their silence, where do they stand if Diddy doesn't walk free? When your fame is partially built on proximity to power, what happens when that power is stripped away? Do you fade into the background or pivot into a new narrative? That's the tension behind Santana's viral clip. Was it a moment of real emotion, missing the laughter, the energy, the chaos of a man who once ruled every room? Or was it a carefully timed move, a way to slide back into the conversation just as Diddy inches closer to possible release? The truth is, we may never know the intent, but we can't ignore the pattern. Because in Hollywood, and especially in hip-hop, support often comes not when it's needed, but when it's safe. And in this moment, with Diddy's fate hanging in the balance, the real question isn't whether he was fun at parties, it's who's showing up now, and why. That's the question lingering in the air, just for Diddy, but for anyone who's watched power shift hands overnight. In the silence that followed his arrest, the party invites stopped, the social media tags vanished, and the so-called loyalty from the industry faded fast. Now, with the worst charges behind him, and whispers of a return growing louder, familiar faces are starting to resurface. But is it loyalty or just strategy? Because, in the world of fame, timing is everything. Some people stay quiet because they're scared, others because they're calculating. And when the smoke finally clears, only a few ever show up for you without checking if it's trending. Diddy's not just facing a legal sentence, he's facing a cultural one. And as his story unfolds, the people around him will either stand up or step aside. So the next time someone says they miss him, ask yourself, did they miss him? Or did they miss what being close to him once meant? Because in this game, the real loyalty doesn't show up when you're winning. It shows up when there's nothing left to gain. Hit subscribe, tap the bell, and stay locked in. Because the truth, it's just getting started.